We need to die to ourselves. But this is not the end. This is just the first part. Look what it says. Number one is refusing, okay, or denying ourselves. But look at the rest of the verse. And take up his cross daily and follow me, Jesus said. Now, as I was meditating upon the scriptures, this is something that God was just illuminating a couple new ideas, not ideas, new principles that I didn't see that before as much. Number one, Jesus said, take up his cross daily and follow me. Now, have you ever thought about this? When we read a verse like this, when we read a scripture like this, we often look at it from our perspective, which is 2,000 years after Jesus died on the cross. So we know exactly what he's talking about because he went on the cross and died and suffered and so on. But when Jesus spoke these words, he was not at the cross yet. We don't know how many days or months or weeks still coming up, but when he spoke these words to the disciples, even though the disciples were familiar with the cross and how people died on the cross, but when Jesus spoke to these words to the disciples may be thinking, said, what is he talking about, that if we want to follow you, we got to carry a cross and follow you? You have to think about that. Because it didn't happen yet when Jesus spoke about these words. For us, we understand because we're from the other side of the coin, okay? So here's what I'm saying. Do you notice that when Jesus spoke these words, he was not at the cross yet, but every day that he lived on earth, he was always walking towards the cross. Every day in his life, in his earthly life, his focus was at the cross. He was always one day closer or one step closer to Golgotha, to the time when he had to be on the cross. And so he was never finished until he hung on the cross. Every day he was walking that way. Every day that he did, his ministries is always pointing towards the final destiny, final goal, which in his case, it was on the cross. Why? Because without the cross, there is no resurrection. And without the resurrection, we will all be still doomed towards death. And so it's the same thing for us, church. While we're walking on earth, while we're still on earth, with whatever years that God has given us left on earth, we need to always walk towards the cross. We need to always keep our eyes focused on the cross. What does it mean that we need to focus our eyes on the cross? It means that just like Jesus finally finished his ministry on the cross when he finally said, it is finished. He totally surrendered his life. And he did exactly everything that his Father told him to do. And finally on the cross, he said, finally, it's finished. For us on earth, whether we have one day left or 50 years left on earth, we need to have that same focus like Jesus. I need to walk every day towards the cross, which means that we need to be able to surrender every day more and more to him. Because I know most of us here will have probably said, yeah, I've given my life to Jesus. That's true. But how many of us really have given total 100% surrender to him in every areas of our life? I don't think any of us have. If God speaks to you tonight and say, hey, I want you to sell your house and give it over to the poor, would you do it tomorrow? It's hard. How many of us can really do that? All of us probably still have our own will. It's very difficult to let go. But what Jesus is tell us here, hey, if we want to follow him, every day we have to be ready to walk towards the cross. That's our final destiny. Every day we're learning to surrender more of our lives, more of our rights, or more of our properties, more of our money, more of our sexuality, more of our free time. Everything we surrendered more and more and more until that point when we can say, it is finished. Lord, I've done everything that you asked me to do. I've completed and I've surrendered even my life. Like for Jesus in his case, he even gave his life on the cross. And that's why he's able to say, it is finished. And so for us, in this transition, as we visit a grave, we need to be able to say, Lord, it's about you. It's about your will. I'm just dying to myself. I'm just surrendering more of my rights. I'm just surrendering more of my agendas. I'm surrendering more of my, desires. And I think, whatever you want, God, I will follow. Because I'm called to follow you. But the last thing I want to say to you about the third thing, the second thing I have to say about this second portion of the verse, when he says, Take up his cross daily and follow me. Do you notice one thing here? Our job that Jesus tells his disciples was, we are simply to pick up our cross and follow Jesus every day. Jesus never said that you need to kill yourself. Okay? It didn't say that. If you look at the verse carefully again, he says, what he wants us to do is to take up our own cross every day and simply follow him. Where and when and how you will die or crucified is up to him. Jesus did not kill himself. Jesus did not crucify himself. So, he was faithful. He was carrying the cross. He did not resist. Even though he was beaten and tortured, he was willing to carry his cross. And that's our job. Our job is simply to carry the cross, our own cross, and follow him. When Jesus finally reached the mountain, or the hill, I should say, as you can see from this picture, who crucified him? Not himself, but others, the Roman soldiers or those who hate him. What am I saying, church? It's something I didn't see that earlier before when I read, but as I meditated, I said, it's interesting. It means that you and I need to carry our own cross, but it will be someone else that will crucify us. Jesus could not crucify himself even if he wanted to on earth. Maybe at the most he can take a nail, okay, and then he can kind of like nail his feet, It may be painful, but let's say he can do it. And maybe you can nail your own left hand if you're a righty, okay? So maybe you can grab a nail, you kind of like, kind of balance it here on your hand perhaps. And you put your hand on the cross, and you take your hammer and bang, bang. So you already banged this one, and you bang this one. How are you going to nail this one? You can't, right? You can't nail yourself. We could put a nail in your mouth and, spit it really hard like a gale force wind and stuck in your hand. You can't. You need someone else to nail it. So what am I saying, church? It means that in life, our job is to carry our cross and follow Jesus. But along the way, God is going to use people in our life. God is going to use circumstances in our life to crucify us. Those people could be even your spouse. It could be your children, could be your parents, could be the church, could be your spiritual leaders, could be the government, or it could be your boss or your employee or your employer, anybody. God can use anybody in our lives. And God can use circumstances in our lives to crucify us. Because we can't crucify ourselves. It's going to be painful. As we carry our cross, as we follow Jesus, along the way, we'll meet people or we'll meet circumstances and they will crucify us. And our job is not to come down. God said, no, every day, just follow me. Every day, just follow me. Yes, it's going to be painful. Yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, but like I said, you can't do it yourself. So God is going to use circumstances and people in our lives. And it's okay. God is saying, just follow me. That's part of the plan. Part of the plan to deny ourselves. Part of the plan to die to self. And it's going to help us to come closer and closer so that one day we can say, it is finished. So I close with you with this verse that God has spoken to me especially. I shared this to you last week too. Galatians 2:20. I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live, in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loves me and gives himself for me. I memorized that verse a long time ago. But the last couple of weeks has been, especially last week, Thursday night, this verse just kept on bombarding in my heart, my head. Because that was a struggle for me too, with this transition. But God keeps reminding myself, hey, you have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. If we believe that Christ is in us, if we believe that, we are a follower of Christ, and we can say, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me, then that's why we need to go to God in prayer. And let the Christ that is in us lead us where we go. Even though it may be painful, even though it's not our agenda, even though we don't like it. But God didn't ask us, hey, your journey is going to be likable. Your journey is going to be pleasant all the time.